Welcome back to another Stampede Blue Colts cast, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your host, Matt Danley. Tonight, folks, we are doing another listener live call-in show. So get the phone number ready if you guys are wanting to ring in. It's 574-626-8689. We'll get to the calls here in just a minute. We'll take those as soon as we can here, so just hang tight. But let's get through a little bit of some news here. The Colts have announced their training camp schedule, and basically, we've got it all set now. It's all set. We're starting the 25th of July, and they've got, let's see, let me get these dates right and make sure everything's all good on that. And they're starting, I think, with what do they say? What are they calling it? Camp kickoff or whatever they're doing there. It's at Grand Park. The dates through are the 25th of July through August 18th. They've got a bunch of them listed. You guys can check out the post on Stampede Blue where they've got the schedule, and it goes all the way through the 18th of August. Lots of practices, lots of availability. The Colts really said they were going to put the emphasis this year on the fans, which is very cool because they need to, after last year having to do it there at their whatever you want to call it, at their own, the Farm Bureau center, and really didn't want to, make sure that they made the same mistakes that they were forced to basically make last year. There's nothing they could really do about it, but they did end up having it there. They had a couple open to some fans, but not a whole lot. This year they are packed with a lot of practices. It doesn't seem like they have as many days off this year. That last year and the past couple years, they've had Thursdays pretty specifically as days off. That is not really the situation this year. In fact, it goes through the very first preseason game after the Seattle game. It'll go all the way through up until 2 days before the Baltimore game for the preseason. So this should be a really exciting training camp, guys. I mean, not only for us that are going to be able to go see, it is free. You guys have tickets. They have a lot of days for like kids days and such like that. So that'll be fun. You can take your kids down there. A lot of autograph sessions. And I believe that there's a couple days where they have all of the Colts basically available for that. So that'll be fun. I think, it's a really interesting training camp schedule right now, just because they've got so much of it just heavily built on evening practices. They've got a ton, like 4 or 5 evening practices through that. I don't know if they're doing one at a high school this year like they've done in the past. They might. Some of them aren't specified in that regard, but they've got a ton of practices, guys. So this training camp is going to be awesome. Not to mention it's at Grand Park. That is going to be such an awesome event, I think, all the way through the summer. So like I said, you do have to get a ticket. You can get them through Colts.com, but you don't have to pay. At least that's what they've said. So that's going to be a great time. They've got Colts City opens up most of the time around noon and then goes through the practice until about a half hour afterwards. I think most of it closes at 4 o'clock. So a lot of things, going on here, guys. So it's going to be fun. I think that we're all going to be excited about it. And, I think that they need to make sure that they are keeping all of this, in jest. I mean, this is excellent for the fans this year coming back. So we're getting a couple phone calls. For some reason, they're not coming through. So go ahead and try again if you guys haven't been getting through. We're seeing what's going on here. But 574 626 8689 is the phone number. Should be good to go. On those, like I said, we've had a few phone calls already. There we go. We got one coming in right now. So let's kick it off right now with our first call from the Colts cast. What's going on? You're live.
Oh, hey, how's it going, Matt?
Doing great.
This is Christian Caranides from Brooklyn, New York, big Colts fan.
How you doing, Christian? Good to have you on, man.
Yeah, I'm doing well.
Good.
So yeah, been obviously following the Colts offseason pretty closely, and wanted to get your opinion on this running back group, because to me it doesn't seem like there's a clear front runner, and we have a head coach and play caller coming from the Eagle system, which has kind of a complex running game with lots of different pieces. Wanted to see what your thoughts are on on how it's going to shake out.
I think we talked about this the other night just a little bit, but I like the running back group. but I think it's not one of the positions right now. Now, I think there's a little bit of intrigue, I guess, because we don't really know the status of Nyheim Hines. He went out of practice the other day with, I mean, just wild guess, you would assume it was some sort of like a hammy issue or something like that. But he left practice kind of holding his thigh, I guess they said, as he went out. But I mean, I like the guys that they drafted. I think that I think that everybody likes Nyheim Hines. Jordan Wilkins is a very interesting runner. He's going to be fun to watch once the pads come on. But I mean, really, Marlon Mack and Robert Turbin, I think that those guys round out the running back group. I think in order for maybe a guy like Wilkins to not make the roster or something like that, at least not to be on the initial 53, that would mean that Josh Ferguson has an amazing training camp. And I just don't see that he's got the ability for it. You know what I'm saying? It's not that he couldn't have a great camp. I just don't think that he's got enough in his arsenal, I guess you could say, to where he's going to outrun anybody and out muscle anybody or anything like that. Christine Michael doesn't really spark, any real interest in me. The Colts have a very defined set for Robert Turbin, what he's going to be asked to do. I don't know that he's going to get quite the amount of looks in that situation with the short yardage situations that he had been in the past. But I do think that this group is a fairly set in stone, if that's even possible to say, before we even touch training camp. I just don't find that anybody's going to beat those top four, and I definitely don't see the Colts getting more than four on the roster. Now, in terms of what we can maybe expect from that group, I think that we've got one of the most dynamic backfields in recent history. Frank Gore was definitely the bell cow here for the Colts. He was definitely a guy who was super consistent. He was never really great as far as, getting a lot of those second and third level yards like we talked about. He didn't make a lot of people miss. And even when he did, he wasn't getting chunk yardage after that. He was only getting another couple yards and such. But I mean, with the dynamic group of Mack and Hines, and then you add like I said, the late down and short yardage guy with Turbin, and then you have Jordan Wilkins in there, who's a big back. He can be physical, but he's not a short yardage pounder. He is a guy who is going to possibly break some. He kind of reminds me of, honestly, of Donald Brown without the speed. He doesn't quite have that kind of speed.
Interesting.
Yeah, he's just shifty. He's got good vision. He is, and I've said this several times. I don't know if people are annoyed with it yet, but he is almost annoyingly patient. You know what I'm saying? You see those guys, and I think he runs a risk maybe of getting busted in the backfield for some tackles for loss occasionally. But I think just as often he's going to find little seams in that in the running lanes that a lot of people won't see. He has that patience to where he's going to wait for something to open up, and he's got good vision once he gets through the line. That's something that I think he might have a better than anybody else in this running back group, to be quite honest with you. Once he gets past that 5 yards, I think he's really, really good at finding good running lanes to extend that run.
Well, so I asked about the running group just because, I think it's the way the NFL's moved is really interesting with the amount that's being invested in offensive lines. And I just feel like the NFL is really caught up to what kind of, what makes the bacon in terms of your running game. And with the investment the Colts have made, and with, at least in my mind, a little bit of uncertainty in terms of, who's going to be special in this running back group. It's just, I'm kind of excited to see how it works out.
Yeah, I am too. And I agree with you in that regard. I don't know that any one back is going to be special, but like you mentioned, with the offensive line that the Colts have coming into this season, Slauson isn't a great, in my opinion, is not a great guard. I think that he's probably in that starting lineup thus far through OTAs and through minicamp because he's a veteran. He's smart and he knows everything there is to know probably about playing that guard spot. Maybe he starts the season, as the right guard. Maybe he doesn't. But one way or another, this offensive line is significantly better than anything the Colts have had in several years. And when you add, like I said, the dynamic is just the only word that continues to come to mind when I think about Mack and Hines, being able to really stretch some runs for some serious yardage. This line is going to be able to now, and let me preface this a little bit. One of the things that has plagued the Colts in the past is that ability to get from through the offensive line to the 5 yards past and then breaking it and then making something of that run more than just a 5-yard run. That's what I think this offensive line, with the improvement of the athleticism along it, and the speed and the agility that the backfield has right now, at least in terms of where we're at now, I think this is going to be a good match between the two units, between the offensive line and the backfield. Obviously, we know that Andrew Luck is going to be back. We're going to, we're not talking about that much anymore as far as, is Andrew going to be back? So anything that he does, looking even remotely close to the old Andrew, is going to make this offense just click, and it's going to be great to watch. I think everybody can stand to see a lot of these units really look like an upgrade, but I think that a large part of it is kind of what you've said, that it's going to be because they're all complementing each other, not because they're, Marlon Mack is, an MVP type candidate, but because when he's learned through practices and he's gotten the combination of Andrew Luck and an improved offensive line, that they've helped him kind of extend some runs and make, some better plays throughout.
Gotcha. Do you mind if I ask you a second question?
No, go ahead.
Okay, great. Well, so the other really intriguing piece for me on that offense is, somebody who has definitely come up a couple times, and it's Chester Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy who doesn't come in with a lot of pedigree, and we were really excited about last year. Got injured, is back. There's opportunities to get in that wide receiver core, and I like, from a fantasy perspective and from a Colts fan perspective, I don't know if I can trust them, but I really want to.
Right. I think that this year is really, in terms of a fantasy outlook, not so much fantasy itself, but looking at the receivers, with all of the competition that's going to come with these guys, and Chester's going to be part of this, no doubt. He's going to be in that mix, and he may come out in training camp if he's totally healthy and ready to go. He may come out or he may initially come in as the number 3 or somewhere, maybe even the number 2. We don't know necessarily yet. But this group is going to be a group, I think, that Andrew Luck is just salivating with. A lot of young, tall, fast talent that he can spread the ball around, where nobody is really the target outside of T.Y. Hilton. I mean, I think that you look at T.Y. Hilton. T.Y. Hilton's a guy, and they talked about him earlier today. I think Stephen Holder was talking about how much more focused he is right now. He's going to be really the benefit of this. Those long, those deep balls, those balls where he gets a lot of yak after the play, are really going to benefit him, because a lot of these guys are going to be able to stretch the ball after they catch it. They're going to be able to be, they're big enough to challenge at the catch point. This is a really interesting wide receiver group. They are not, the most highly touted group, nationally, of course. But when you look at their height, their speed, their athleticism, and just hearing about what Deion Kane has been able to do, I think that there is a lot of interest in this group. Reese Fountain's really a solid talent. Ryan Grant has been described, as one of those, as kind of a Doyle-esque receiver. He does everything right. He's not super flashy. He's not going to, go 60-yard touchdowns several times a game. But a lot of people like Steve Ishmael, the guy out of Syracuse. There are so many guys on here that are interesting. James Wright's really done well, apparently, according to George Bremer from the other night. KJ Brent's really improved and impressed some people. And Chester Rogers is still there as a guy who's been consistent. He's a great route runner. And he might be the only other guy on here that is a little slighter build, similar to T.Y. and some of those other guys. Most of the guys that they've got throughout the wide receiver core are 6'2", 2+, 215. It's really going to be fun. But I mean, honestly, unless it's T.Y. Hilton, if you're talking fantasy, I don't think that you're going to do well by getting Chester Rogers, picking him up, because I think the ball's going to be spread around too much.
Gotcha. Yeah, and and to keep moving move around to different position groups, I always kind of thought that the X factor for the Colts, if they, it's a tough division. If they go in there and surprise anybody, it's because someone like Eric Ebron really took the next step. Somebody who's, we know, has the talent and is kind of looking for the right position in order to kind of blow up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Ebron brings a lot to the table. I think a lot of, I think, just from what we've seen, George and I both are pretty high on Travis, and apparently Nick Sirianni, the Colts offensive coordinator now, is really high on him, and the other tight ends for that matter. This is a group that's impressing in camp, so it's definitely going to be a fun offense. I think this offense is going to surprise some people, but I think in terms of what the Colts have available to them, I think that there's going to be some expectations behind this offense too, especially if Andrew Luck is in camp and looks really, really good. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. And hey, thanks again for answering my questions. I really appreciate your time.
Hey, absolutely. Thanks for calling in, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Bye.
All right. One call down, guys. We're ready for the next group of calls. If you guys are wanting to call in, 574-626-8689. I am shutting off the ringer as I answer a phone call, just so you guys know. So if you're trying to call in and you're not getting through, that's why. But the good conversation there. He's looking at the offensive, the skill positions, and it is a fun group. I think this offense is going to be one of the better in the division, to be quite honest with you. I mean, when you look at what we have with some of the other guys or the other groups in this division, we've got Blake Bortles, who a lot of people are not going to be impressed with. Again, there is some good receiving talent there, but we've also got some other groups in a lot of the Tennessee Titans skill positions. They're unproven. They've improved, but they're unproven right now, and they've got a new set of coaching staff. So I mean, when you add it all together, this Colts group could be really, really fun to watch, and probably one of the better in the division. So next call is up. What's up? You're on the Colts cast.
Hey, how's it going? Is it me?
Yep, you're up. What's up?
Oh, hey, Matt. This is James. This is a Hoosier transplant in the Tampa area.
Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, doing well, you?
Good, doing great.
Yeah, I just have a few questions. Just one, with all the talk of Simon moving to defensive end from the linebacker position, is there really any room for him in the scheme at his size? Because looking it up, I think he's only like 250 pounds. Like, especially going in some of the bigger offensive linemen, he's going to be like quickly overpowered. I just don't know how he's going to make that transition.
You did say Simon, right?
Yeah, John Simon, because he had such a killer year last year. Like, especially when he was healthy, like he was always in or around like some of the bigger plays.
Yeah, Simon's one of those guys that we all really liked last year. I mean, I did a couple film room pieces on him even, and there was a lot of times that he just was the train, the motor that was running this defense often. Because if you remember last year, Jabal Sheard took some time to really get acclimated and really kind of make an impact. And it seemed like John Simon early was doing that. Like you said, they've talked about him being undersized in this scheme, and I don't think he's going to be bad. I think he'll be fine. I just honestly think that guys like Kamiko Toure, I think that even probably, not to mention that Basham is currently the starter, but Tyquan Lewis eventually, I think that he might get additional looks there, because I think he's going to be possibly used as a strong side edge at times, whereas Kamiko Toure is going to, possibly be opposite Terrell Basham at times. These are all my projections. These are not, substantiated by any means. So I'm just kind of talking like I normally do. But I think, one of their best pass rush sets would probably be Toure and Basham opposite each other, and bookending. And I just think that a lot of what the Colts want to do going forward, what they have, what they're setting up for with this scheme, the talent that they acquired for this defense, for the growth, I don't know how much of that really involves John Simon. Now, Simon could be a guy who comes in and just is kicking ass, you know what I mean, in the beginning of the season again. And then how do you turn him away? You don't. You leave him in there as the backup. You rotate him in to get him in, because he's a quality football player. He's a good run stopper. He's good at rushing the passer. He's able to twist. He's able to go inside and outside when he's trying to get after the passer. So I think that he definitely has a spot here. But there are a lot of things going against him. And I think not only the youth that the Colts currently have, but the ability and the size that he has it's going to be hard, I think. And if there's one guy that maybe, I would think of possibly gets moved, or possibly, they find another way to get him involved or something like that. It could be Simon. I'm just not so sure. Whereas last year I thought that he was a guy who was critical to the defense. Before Jonathan Hankins got traded, we had talked about and our friend George Brimmer as well. He was kind of first on this, that, the common thought was that John Simon might be the guy who doesn't, technically, air quotes, fit in this new scheme, but it was Hankins that was released.
You completely stole my thought. Yeah, I was thinking the same thing.
It's really
just
hard
because not only that, but like Hankins played in the 4-3 before.
Yeah, so did
whether it was with the Giants or Ohio State,
and so did Simon though. So did Simon. So I mean, he is from that type of system. He just doesn't. His body type isn't the same. You know what I mean? And it's obviously a different position than Hankins was. And so it's really hard to tell, honestly. I think that if nothing else is any different, if they go forward, he becomes the backdrop, the secondary guy there that is going to be the strong side edge, or whatever they end up doing with him. He may just last the season, but he will not be here next year. I mean that's and I hate saying that. John's an excellent guy. He is really a nice guy. I was able to talk to him last year in camp a couple times. Really a good guy. Really a nose to the grind worker. And I think that you see a little bit of behind the veil, I suppose you could say, when you see questions being asked about Simon in camp. They're saying, well, he's really working his butt off and he's doing well and all this and that. There's never anything that says, man, he looks really good. He is, for his size, they're not battling the questions, I guess you could say, that are being asked with improvement or what. I'm not sure how to explain that or how to put that out there, but they're not like giving him a full endorsement about his skill set in this scheme. It's all he's working his butt off, but that's who John Simon is. And that to me kind of makes me wonder myself what his future holds.
Yeah. I mean, I think that he's just one of those other bridge players that they keep talking about, because every time you hear Ballard speak, he talks about being able to grow your own, being able to like build through the draft. And I think that's what he's going to do. That's why we're seeing less and less free agents come in. And if they are super short contracts, even Hankins, he was supposed to be one of those players that we thought might be solid, him only lasting a year. So that's why I think, he's probably going to be phased out, whether it's like through the season or maybe not even past minicamp. Yeah.
And it is really too bad, because he, like I said, he is a great guy. He is a hard worker, and he's great for the youth on this team. But the question that is probably more important right now is he really good for this scheme, and what does he bring to the table in terms of how he can make the team better? And I think outside of being the person that he is and the leader that he is, maybe there's not as much on the field that within this scheme and with the transition that they're making that he really might offer. And that, like I said, it's too bad, but I think that's probably the bare bones of the truth.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that sounds pretty in line with that. So just my last question is just going to be, do you expect a lot of two tight end set with the addition of Ebron? Just since we have those two solid pieces, I really believe like Ebron has that chance to be able to break out. I mean, he's such a talented receiver. Hopefully he has the right coaches and we have the right scheme, especially with Andrew being back. It's going to give him a lot of options to be able to do his game.
Yeah. And I mean, there's definitely going to be a ton of two tight end sets. But the real intrigue comes with, what do they do when they go to the single tight end? Is it Ebron or is it Doyle? Or and how are they, bringing in and utilizing the running backs in those situations? What are the packages? Is it 13 personnel? What is it that they're doing, or 20? Just whatever. It's going to be really, it's going to be really interesting to see how they work those tight ends in, because they can definitely, we've seen them use Doyle in the backfield as an H-back, right? I don't think that's going to change, because if you look at Philly's offense from a year ago, they did that quite a bit. I think that with Ross Travis being kind of the X factor there at tight end, whatever he comes out of camp really impressing on Frank Reich and the offensive coaching staff, that's probably going to determine kind of their focus with that group, in my opinion, because they know what they've got in Doyle. They know how what they can do, at least how they can move around Eric Ebron. But what they really need is somebody who can challenge the middle of the field, beat linebackers in coverage, and then really challenge the safeties and able to get, maybe T.Y. Hilton some extra looks out there on the edges, one-on-one, to be able to keep some of those guys underneath, to be able, they really have a good mix of decoy with talent, and even their decoys are really good. And I think Travis will be primarily used as a decoy, but they're going to go to him. They're going to use him, and they should. Eric Ebron's going to be a really phenomenal piece too, because he's going to draw a lot of attention.
Yeah, I think it's also going to help when we have like an established number 2 wide receiver, because that's something that's still being determined in camp.
Very much so. Yep. That's one of the X factors as well for that group. Who's that guy, right? Because everybody in the NFL and Colts fans and everybody's fans know what Ty brings. There's no two ways about that. But is it a guy like, and I just mean body style, that's more like Deion Kane, or is it a guy that's a little bit bigger with Krishan Hogan, or is it a guy like Reese Fountain? We don't know any of that. Or is it Ryan Grant? It just all depends. That number 2 wide receiver role is going to be pivotal for that group, because it's really going to help determine what kind of body styles they like. And because you can't have a guy who's 5'9" and then nothing but 6'3", 220 guys as a receiver. You've got an extra receiver with Eric Ebron out there and his size and weight. You know what I mean? You've got those extra pieces. And then you've got some of the smaller guys that can help with the running backs. So what do? You try to find that middle ground and try to mix and match some of the best talent that you've got out of there that offer you the most options, I guess. What can they do? Can they line up in the slot? Can they take a guy out near the boundary? And this wide receiver crew, and I've said it several times before, but it's going to be the most fun position, in my opinion, to watch as we go forward. It's not the most critical, I think, because I think linebacker is really critical with a defense that's making such major transitions. But I think this wide receiver crew is going to be a blast to watch in camp, because
it's just so wide open.
Oh, yeah.
It's anybody's for the taking.
And just like I think said,
that's definitely that's what Ballard.
Yep. Like you said, after Ty, it's wide open.
Yeah. And then that's what Ballard wants, though. That's something that he's been harping on since day one, is competition, being able to push people to the top. Like, if you want that position, you got to work for it. You got to work your way up the depth chart. So,
absolutely.
Hey, but thank you so much for taking my call.
Absolutely, man. Enjoyed it. Thanks for calling in.
Yeah. You too. Bye.
Bye-bye. Excellent calls, guys. I'm loving these. So we're going to keep these up. Obviously, that's what the show is about tonight. So 574-626-8689 if you guys want to get a call in. We've got one coming in right now, so let's get to it right now. Thank you for calling in. You're on the Colts Cast. You there? Not hearing you. Let's go. Sorry, man. Had to hang up on you. Try it again, though. If you guys want to call in, 574-626-8689. We'll get you in here in just a second. Just a lot of things, guys, to look forward to, especially in training camp. Trying to train this offense to be, as dynamic as humanly possible. Trying to get the very most out of Andrew Luck. Trying to get the new scheme, the new positions and everything else that comes with it involved is going to be extremely, extremely exciting. And I think that we're all going to benefit from it for sure. What's up, man? You're on the Colts Cast.
All right. I just got to say I love wide receivers because they're always open for those fucking dicks.
So that's not a cool call. So we'll make sure that we don't let that one back on. Thanks, man. Appreciate and just as a future note, children, make sure you ask your parents before you call in. Would really greatly appreciate that. Don't call into a big boy show. So let's move on with that. We want to get a call here on the defense. Let's talk some of the defense here. We've kind of been focused here on the offense quite a bit as we've been going so far. So let's talk about the defense here. Some of you guys that want to call in, let's do that. And let's see what we got with our next call. What's up? You're on the Colts Cast.
Hello?
You there? Hey, what's up? You're on the Colts cast.
Hi, how's it going? I wanted to call in. I've been meaning to call in over the last couple of shows, but I really haven't had the chance. And I heard that you wanted to talk about defense.
Let's do it. What do you got?
Sorry, I can hear like kind of a echo in the background.
Oh, sorry.
Kind of.
What do you got? Let's talk some defense.
What is it? First of all, I've heard a lot of Colts fans complain about the cover 2 defense, and the fact that it's just a very simple defense, or at least that's what people think.
Yeah. It is a little bit.
Personally, I don't see what the issue is by changing from a 3-4 to a 4-3 defense, or a cover 2 to a 3-4 defense, vice versa. I think that they're both kind of the same type of defense. I mean, well, not the same defense, but I'm saying like you can get production from either or defense if you have the right personnel and the right coaching staff.
Well, of course.
I like the issues that people seem to have with it is that it's very straightforward. You know what to expect, or at least opponents know what to expect. They know how to attack it. But I mean, the Seahawks, when they had that cover 3 defense, or they still do, but I mean, in 2013, their defense was very predictable. They knew what kind of coverage they were going to be in. They didn't do any tricky stuff, but it was extremely effective because they had the right personnel and because they had good technique and a good coaching staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, look, any offense, any defense, once they've been running it for a while, teams are going to know how to attack it, right? The Colts may benefit a little bit from everything being implemented this year, early on in the season, for anything that they may be lacking in the beginning of the year with maybe some talent or some knowledge of what they're doing. They're going to gain a little bit of kind of the kind of the sneak attack almost, just a little bit. But look, the 4-3, the way that it's being described by the coaching staff, by Frank Reich, by Matt Eberflus, a lot of what they're saying is it doesn't give these guys a ton of responsibilities. Each of the positions, on certain downs and distances, have specific responsibilities. The back end of it, what it calls for is a premier middle linebacker coverage wise. They're not the same kind of a linebacker that you would see in a 3-4. The reason that I think a lot of people are not upset about it necessarily, but they're not super hype about it, is because a lot of what the Colts ran with Tony Dungy at the helm with their 4-3 and their Tampa 2 base scheme was that the running game was just wide open on them all the time. The Colts made a little bit of they made some ground up on that last year within the 3-4. I don't think the 3-4 is a great scheme either. But what I do like is that Matt Eberflus's ability, from anything that I've read, some of the Cowboys guys that I've talked to, as much as he is a teacher, he's a learner. He wants to know, he wants to dive into film and be able to find little pieces that he can wreck an offense with. Right. So that I think that is what gives me hope that he's going to be a guy who's always trying to be unique in his defense, his scheme, his front. He's going to try to confuse offenses. And obviously that's the idea for every defense. Don't get me wrong. But I think that the real point here is that the guy is constantly going to try to one up every offense that he plays. And when you've got some guys in the back end, you've got a coverage to where you've got a guy who can cover the entire field. He's only going to be forced to cover half of it now. And you've got some linebackers with some length and some coverage ability. And if you can possibly get some pressure on the quarterback this year, a lot of things are going to change and people are going to like it. The running game against this Colts this Colts defense in this Tampa 2 is probably going to be suspect at best. Al Woods is going to be extremely key for that. He is going to be have to be a monster on early downs in order for the Colts really to have much success on late downs, I think. But that goes for anybody who plays the off nose role in this, what do they call it, the under tackle or the nose. They're going to have to be good run defenders. And I think some of what Tyquan Lewis brings to the table will help with that. I think that a lot of the guys, even Darius Leonard or whoever plays that will, he's a guy, the will position in this defense is a guy who constantly has to pursue the ball. So what they need is, I mean, the defense is structured as such to be able to cover everything, just like any defense is. The problem with any defense is a lack of being able to execute it. And that's just kind of the way anything is, right? Execution is always key. It's never the Colts or it's never the players' fault. It's always the coaches when you get into certain games. We know this. We've seen, if you're on Twitter, if you're on Facebook, it's always a coach's fault. It's never the players. But the bottom line is that execution is always key. The only problem where you run into a significant issue with the coaching staff is when they fail to try to be unique and creative. And that's when things get stagnant. Players stop believing in the scheme. And quite frankly, they just don't play worth a crap.
Yeah, I mean, I understand all that. And then you bring up the point that the cover 2 defenses, has a bit of struggles against the run. I mean, history has clearly shown that that's the case. But I've seen the cover 2 defense be effective against the run, like back in 2005 with the Colts, or 2007, which I thought was the best defense the Colts ever fielded. And then you look at other teams like the Chicago Bears, you look at Tampa Bay when they were very successful with that defense. I just feel that, going to this defense is probably a better idea than sticking with the 3-4, considering that this is now a passing league. The run game, once you're down like 2-3 scores, is almost negligible. It's not something that you're going to keep using to try to catch up with the other team.
Right. And let me kind of clarify just a little bit, at least my point on, or not my point, but my stance on it. I like the move to the 4-3. I'm just not so much of a fan of the Tampa 2 style back secondary. That to me, I wanted to see a little more cover 3, and we may see that. We may see a little more of a cover 3 look, because I think when you think of the positions, and we all kind of base it off of Seattle, but even look what Atlanta has been doing. They've got, Keanu Neal there. I mean, the Colts, at least theoretically, they've got Clayton Geathers, a guy who can fill that same role. They've got a couple of good cornerbacks that can make this a scheme work. They've got a guy on the back end who can cover anywhere. So they've got the personnel for a sweet look at cover 3 on the back end. So I think the more that they can, like I said, a lot of this depends on creativity. If they can use the talent that they've got in that secondary correctly and be able to draw up plays that can get these guys to show off their assets to their best ability, I think this is going to be a fun defense. I just don't like the thought of running a base Tampa 2 with any consistency, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of people probably mean that when they're complaining about it, whether they understand what they're talking about or not. So it's going to be interesting. And I'm all for getting out of the 3-4. The 3-4 is a dead defense when you don't have a guy, like Son of Bum being, if he's not your coach. The 3-4 is, not, in my opinion, the scheme to use. You run a 4-3 and change up the coverages on the back end so that you can utilize the talent that you've got and make plays. And I think that's what the Colts will probably try to do. I just hate that they doubled down on the Tampa 2. That was kind of my only gripe.
I feel that the Tampa 2 defense, or even cover 3 for that matter, whatever nomenclature you want to use for it, I think it's a bit of a misnomer. Just considering that, I mean, I remember when the Colts ran Tampa 2, with Dungy, it wasn't always like they were in 2 deep coverage. They played cover 4, cover 3, cover 1. There were different variants of that defense that they used depending on, what the opponent was running. I mean, granted, I remember the corners that the Colts had for that Tampa 2 defense probably weren't the prototype that you would find like in a Pete Carroll cover 3 defense. They weren't, or at least the corners that, you know, Ballard's bringing in right now, they weren't nearly as tall or as big as the corners that the Colts are bringing in currently. But I mean, the coverages were, you know, it wasn't just strictly cover 2.
Right. Absolutely.
No.
And I wouldn't expect it to be this go around either. You know, I think that people remember the running game and the issues that it presented. And I think that's what they're really worried about. I don't think that they're worried too much about how the scheme is done on the back end. I don't think they're too worried about much of anything else, really. They just want to be able to see the running game be stopped enough to where the use of all of the guys on the back end is adequate to winning games, to stopping, you know what I mean, to stopping their, their opponents. So I think that a lot of people are going to complain about it, but I think once we get to actually see what's really happening, when we get a few looks at it in the preseason, it won't be much, but when we see a few looks at it throughout the preseason, I think people are going to be pretty excited about it. So, hey man, I appreciate your call. Thank you so much.
No problem.
Great stuff.
Have a good one.
You too. Thank you.
No.
Another great call, guys. So let's take a quick break here real quick to get in with our sponsor. Thank you again to Mike Ernest and his team. Colts fans, we have some exciting news. If you guys haven't heard this before, Mike Ernest and his team recently moved their business over to Remax Advanced Realty and the Indy Home Pros team, the #1 selling real estate team in Indiana. Are you thinking about buying or selling your home? If so, you need to call Mike Ernest at the Indy Home Pros team. Mike and his team of real estate professionals are experts in the greater Indianapolis real estate market, and they've helped people just like you achieve their real estate goals. Whether it's using the latest marketing and social media tools to sell your home or using the combined experience of his entire team to find the right home for you, you can rest assured knowing that no one knows the ins and outs of buying and selling homes in the Indianapolis area better than Mike Ernest. Guys, make sure you guys are getting a hold of Mike Ernest and his Indy Home Pros team because they can help you get the home of your dreams, help you sell your house, whatever you're looking to do. They are the #1 real estate team in Indiana. And get them on your side by calling Mike Ernest at 317-285-9691 or find them online at circlecityforsale.com. Again, that's 317-285-9691 or circlecityforsale.com. Pause here for a quick break, and we'll get back into these phone calls. All right, guys, let's get these calls. A couple of you just called in, and we weren't able to get them. So let's see what we got going on right now. Thanks for calling the Colts Cast. You are on the Colts Cast. What's up?
Fuck the Colts in your big head. Go Ravens.
Oh, that's cute. We got the same cool group calling in. Thanks, guys. So write down some numbers real quick. All right, let's try this again. See if we got an adult on the phone here or a Colts fan. What's up, man? You're on the Colts Cast.
Hey, what's up, buddy? I'm just curious about what are your ideas on the Cowboys?
On the Cowboys, I don't care about the Cowboys. Thank you. All right, let's try it again, guys. So we're gonna have to edit this a little bit. It looks like so. I'm kind of curious as to why we getting so many Colts or non-Colts fans calling in. So may have to shut it down on Twitter and stop all that. But look, a lot of what we've gotten so far as the real look into what this team is going to offer. They are going to be a heavy cover 2 scheme. They are going to be that Tampa 2, which is basically where the linebacker drops heavy to the center, of the field. That's going to be a real issue. So I'm pretty sure we got a Colts fan here. We're going to do that. And not this one. Nope, not that one. Sorry. Tommy Gallagher, not answering your phone call. All right. So 317, call back, man. I'm going to get you answered. So we'll try that. Nope, not you either. All right. We'll try again. Mainly, everybody, I think, is excited about the offense when we look at it in a realistic point of view. But this defense is going to be fun and young, guys. I don't think that there's so much that we can look forward to and say this guy's going to be an extreme stud. I don't think that this guy is going to be, you know, the next big sack artist or anything like that. But guys like Terrell Basham, guys like Kamiko Toure, guys even like Jabal Sheard, I think are going to really improve in this scheme. A lot of these guys have done what they've had to do to get themselves into this scheme. They're going to be effective because this is where they've been. Terrell Basham has been a guy who has grown up in this 4-3, similar to this, to where it's go, 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 and all he has to do is hunt the quarterback. So I think that when we look at a guy like Jabal Sheard, his early years in Cleveland, the same type of thing. Definitely a guy who is going to, I think he's going to flourish in this system. You look at what he did previously, and he was a menace coming out of college and in his early years. I think that he benefits from being in the 3 or 4 point stance and being able to rush the passer heavily off the edge. But I think what they're trying to do with Sheard is I think that they're trying to use him as their strong side. And that, to me, I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing, but I do think that that is going to possibly cause some problems in the future. I just don't think that that's really his sole role, but if they can switch it up a little bit, rotate, get the rotation going there with some of their edge rushers, I think that it could really benefit the Colts in the long run. So, guys, we're going to try to get an intelligent caller on here. Let's hope we got one. What's going on? You're on the Colts cast. No, not you. Sorry. So we're just going to shut down the phones, guys, from now, because not doing, you know, children calling in for the Colts cast. So we're just going to do it this way, and I'm going to run through some things that I think are important for you guys to keep your heads around as we get forward. Let's try that one. That's a 317 number. We'll do that. All right, let's do it. Getting there. Be patient. 317. Call back. This is so annoying. Sorry if you guys are listening. You're as annoyed as I am, but we'll try. And if you called from 317, call me back. I'll answer your phone call, but that's going to be the last one for the night for sure, because I'm not doing this. But like I said, more than anything, this team, there we go. All right. Please tell me we've got a Colts fan on the line.
Yes, sir, you do.
Good God, it's about time. How you doing, man? You're on the Colts cast. What you got for me?
I'm doing pretty good. On the defensive end, I've been looking at Jabal Sheard and what he did last year and what he also did previously in Cleveland. And then I look at Terrell Basham and what his upside is. And me, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I think it might look pretty good for Jabal Sheard to play a little bit of the 3 technique with and then allow Terrain and Basham to play the edges. I don't know where you guys stand with that, but I've seen like earlier in his career, he did some pretty good things out there in Cleveland playing inside, more like the 3 technique, things of that nature. So it's just something, I don't know, I was just wondering what you guys thought about that.
Well, I've kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier in the show, but if you're talking about Sheard being kicked inside, I think that it's something that they can use him as. Now, as specifically using him as a 3 technique, that's what you were talking about, right? And I don't mean like all the time, but that's what your question is, correct? Yeah. I think using him in that 3 technique can be beneficial, but I think that that's more along the lines of what they are really trying to do with Tyquan Lewis. I think that that's the guy that they want to be able to kick inside to the 3 to get that pressure, because look, Sheard is that guy who can rush off the edge, mainly because I think that he's a little bit heavier than he was when he came in, right? So he's got a little bit more of that pass rush edge to his game. As far as bringing him inside, I don't know that he has the explosion that a guy like Lewis has. I don't know that he's got the explosion that a couple of other guys do. but I do think that he's going to be an integral part of the defense. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I think that his outside rush is going to be, absolutely pivotal. Danico Autry, another guy that I continually kind of forget to talk about, but he is a guy who's going to be just as important on early downs as Al Woods, right? Those two inside are going to be ultimately the first team run interior defensive line. Whatever they can do on the outside between Sheard, Kamiko Toure, Terrell Basham, and maybe even Lewis, I think is going to be nothing but a plus. But I think Lewis is a guy who rotates in on some of those later downs on the interior specifically. We've talked about that quite a bit. Sheard, I don't see it too much. Maybe that they do use him there, but I think what they would rather do, and this is totally just based on opinion, I think that they would much rather use the younger guys that they've got, the younger, more intelligent and more talented interior guys that they've got there. They want that speed and youth, and they want those guys to be able to basically pierce that pocket from the interior immediately through that line. Because Lewis, if you watch some of his college tape, he was a quality edge rusher, but he really formed mismatches from the interior, and that is where he is going to most benefit this team, at least in 2018. Down the road, I don't know, but I don't see Sheard being a guy who really gets kicked inside very often. I don't see that would be his bread and butter by any means. I don't really think that that's going to be something that they would prefer to use him in. Now, do they do it occasionally when they just want more pass rushers on the field? Absolutely, I think they will. But I don't think that that's something that they're going to game plan for or with against other game plans. I just don't see that as being one of their focuses.
Yeah, I understand that. It's just something I wanted to throw around.
Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people have brought that up, and it's not a bad idea, and there's nothing wrong with it. And you know what I mean? I just think that the focus of this defense is they've plugged it home, right? They're constantly wanting to talk about speed. They constantly want to talk about speed and youth and everything else that they've got going on. I just think that if they've been plugging it this much, that they're probably going to do everything that they can to use it, and that's what they're going to try to do. Maybe on some of the early downs, they'll switch it up and get those guys in there, and I think that's what they'll try to do, is use a run defender and another guy who can really pressure inside and try to battle back and forth. So just like I said, totally my opinion. I think Sheard's going to be a big part of this defense, though.
Okay. So, all right. Well, what do you think about the corner depth surrounding Quincy Wilson?
Well, I think the corner depth is a little suspect right now, quite honestly. One of the things that I've been trying to talk to people about as much as possible is that the Colts could use a guy like Bashaud Breeland. And why? Because they need somebody who's a proven playmaker. Now, we've seen in the past how many times have we seen the number one guy go down? We've seen it multiple times, right?
Correct.
We haven't even seen Quincy Wilson, more than a few games. He did very well when he was in last year. I'm a big fan of his. Don't get me wrong, but we have very little evidence that this secondary, that this cornerback group, with their lack of experience, is going to really provide anything, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. That's the reason why I was so stunned by Ballard not taking any corners like high, like in the second round or anything,
Right.
One of the second round picks. Because when he traded back in, at the end of it, I thought he saw a corner that he wanted, but he picked, I forget who he picked at that particular spot, but he didn't get a corner. And it just kind of blew me away, because for whatever reason, Chuck Pagano had Quincy Wilson on the sideline. He just healthy scratch, but for whatever reason, he didn't play. So I just wondered. I was really concerned about that.
Yeah, I thought that was weird too. I mean, and I think a lot of people found that pretty weird. But there's no doubting that they like what they've got. Now, what they're seeing a lot more than what we are, obviously. We've only heard 3 practices in OTAs. We had any media coverage from that. We've had media coverage through the first 2 days of minicamp, granted, but we haven't really seen much on the outside. training camp is going to be so pivotal for this secondary group. Now, what we do have is a guy like Nate Hairston. And last night I was on with George, and George was talking about how the first couple guys that came in was Nate Hairston, and Nate Hairston was one of them. They did the same thing with him last year. They used him as an outside boundary corner early on in training camp practices, but they're really a big fan of Kenny Moore. Now, Kenny is a smaller guy, so we have to kind of train ourselves or take ourselves out of what we trained ourselves to believe over the past 5-6 years. The Colts do have some good height and length with this cornerback group, but this is not a primary man coverage group, right? So they don't have to be 6'2" and 205, in this group. They do have some of those guys, but they need guys who can break on the ball, make plays, and disrupt. Kenny Moore is a guy that they really like and a guy that they think can really do that. Even though he's 5'9", 5'10", 180, they love his ball skills. They like what he can really do in this scheme. And I think that he might even be a guy who could challenge for that nickel role. Look, if Nate Hairston proves to be a guy who can play on the boundary, and B, either A, an upgrade to maybe Desir or Quincy Wilson, because we don't know anything yet. But that could be, the starting three and one combination of the two. And I think that if they can get Kenny Moore on the field and they like him that much, they're going to find a way to do it. Although I do think, because there's such a physical aspect to playing in the nickel, I think that they're going to want a guy who's a little bigger than what Kenny Moore really brings. However, they used him outside on the boundary a lot last year, and they really liked what he did, and he was impressive. A lot of people talked about him, I think, when he was with the Patriots initially after the draft. They dropped him, the Colts scooped him up, and then, that's basically all she wrote. And a lot of the Colts last year, the Colts coaching staff really liked him. And the Colts, now the new coaching staff, GM Chris Ballard, they all really like him. So he's definitely, in my opinion, got as much chance as anybody to earn one of those spots.
So if they like Moore and Harrison, so what are we saying is Desir not gonna make it past cut down?
No, I think Desir will definitely make it through. I would predict, if we're going to project just on what we know of skill set, let me put it that way, and ceiling, I think we're going to say that Desir is the week 1 starter. We'll put it there. And I think that Quincy Wilson is probably the week 1 starter. And I would just go ahead and say, obviously, that Hairston is there. We'll keep it kind of chalk from what we kind of thought weeks and weeks ago. But I think there's going to be
saying that they like Hairston them as depth guys.
Yes, I think that they like Hairston to be able to move in and out between the slot and a boundary, and they want to be able to get Kenny Moore on the field, in my opinion, more often. So if they can use that to their advantage, I think they're going to. And I just think that there's a lot of different combinations with this group, even though we don't see a lot of it necessarily, and we're not so impressed with the depth at the position right now. The Colts coaching staff and the front office certainly is. So they like what they've got. We just have to sit here and hope that it was the right move, because they didn't take a corner in the draft. They haven't brought in one of the guys from the outside, Breeland or anybody else. They did work out some players yesterday, as we mentioned, but they didn't sign any of them to my knowledge at this point. So it's all kind of still up in the air. They like what they've got, and if they can all stay healthy, it should be, kind of interesting to see whether the Colts should have made a move at some point, or if the coaching staff is right and this group really pays off in the long run.
Yeah, I believe that in the way Ballard is doing it, he's doing it the right way, but I just would have thought that he would have brought in at least one veteran corner to help the young guys out. I don't want nobody 30 plus years old, but just right. A veteran corner, right. with a presence or whatever. And it just, like I said, earlier, it just really blew me away that he didn't draft one in the second round. I don't know. Maybe he didn't see the value in it. I don't know, but I thought it was some pretty good guys still available when we were drafting.
Mm-hmm.
I just figured, what last year, what happened to the defense, the front seven did a really good job until late in the game. and then they wore down, and then they just start throwing the ball over the head. We didn't have no cover guys. It just as bad as we were in coverage last year. It really blew me away how we drafted 11 guys and none of them were corners. I don't get it.
Yeah. Some of this stuff happens every year, and it's hard to kind of really wrap your head around it until you see the final product, and then you can kind of, then you see what the thought process was and everything else. So,
well, I mean, I know I'm not a tennis guy, but just a Colts fan that love Colts, and I just kick ideas around. It's just, I don't know.
That's what this is all about, my man. So, that's how it goes. I mean, you kind of and there's going to be a lot of that over the next month because there's not going to be much at all to talk about. There's not going to be any news. All these guys are going back home or going wherever they're going for the next 4 weeks. Hopefully there's no news because we don't need any news concerning the Indianapolis Colts when they're not supposed to be making news. Because if they're making news, it ain't going to be good. So, I mean, and this is that time for all of us, the fan base, to go basically crazy with our off the wall thoughts and everything else and try to make something happen before training camp even hits the road. So it's going to be interesting, man. So, hey, I appreciate your call. Thank you so much, man.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Guys, we did have some great calls tonight. We also had some bad stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that you guys aren't getting in the podcast. So we'll just leave it at that. So thank you guys, for another good call-in show. Hopefully we can keep these from happening. Try to focus on what we're getting, some real calls. We need some of that instead of the little children trying to ruin our show. That's not cool. So we'll move on from that, guys. It's going to be like a really boring next 4 weeks, like I've already mentioned. We've got a lot of stuff to kick around. There's going to be a lot of things going on over the next probably 48 hours. A lot of guys moving around, getting out and getting, possibly some interviews, depending on what we can get worked out with Colts and stuff like that. We'll have to see what we can do. But right now is their time to chill. So I wouldn't count on it at all. But we'll do what we can to try to get you guys and keep you guys entertained. But more or less, it's going to be a lot of predictions, a lot of stuff thrown against the wall and seeing if it'll stick. And we'll have to all come back and reconvene here in the next month and kind of see what we got right and what we got wrong. So thank you guys all for calling in. Those of you that got your calls on the air and deserve them to be, I appreciate it. That's what we need. Thank you guys all for listening. You guys have been great. Continue to share the show. Go to iTunes and review it and rate it. Would appreciate it. Thank you guys all for everything you guys are doing. Go to Stampede Blue to get all your Colts news. And we will talk to you guys next time right here on the Colts Cast.